Hey, welcome to Dream Peaches. I'm Jessie. I'm your host. Um, Before we get started, I kind of wanted to give you guys a little insight of uh, the website, which is at dreampeaches.net. So, as you can see, this is the website here. Um, you can scroll down, you can see some updates and recent forum posts. Go over to the forum, and here it is. Here's the forum. There's a bunch of different categories there that you can feel free to add your information to, your opinions and whatnot. All right, so today's episode is on gates and the stone maze portion of the Labyrinth. If you are new to this channel, this is all about the film Labyrinth, and it's kind of designed for mainly for like fanfic writers, people who want to have a little more of a deep dive into the world of Labyrinth. So I wanted to start out with a definition. So gate is defined as a hinge barrier used to close an opening in a wall, fence, or hedge. And so in these terms, there are four gates that Sarah has to pass through. There's the outer gate, Jim, Tim, and Alf and Ralph is a gate, or the riddle gate. We could always call it the riddle gate. There's the knockers, and there's also the Goblin City gate. So we're going to be talking about those four, and then also the rest of the stone maze. So, okay, so the outer gate. The outer gate, I'm going to put a picture here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. The outer gate of the labyrinth is presumably the start of the labyrinth. That's usually where you start, is at the start. This area outside the labyrinth appears to be fairly barren, but in the same sense that like a desert is barren, where there's still flora and fauna present. There's just not a lot of huge trees. There's not like a forest, that sort of thing. So what we can see here in the opening scene when Sarah is first taken to the labyrinth, there's a real strong wind going on. You can see Jarrett's hair blowing in the wind. There are a couple of large trees. They don't really have any growth on them, but they're kind of these large trees. There's also some new growth trees going on. They're kind of scrappy looking. There are some desert grasses, some rather dead looking flowers, or maybe some flowering shrubs, and at least three types of blooming flowers, which we can see once Sarah gets closer to the outer wall. And these happen to be there's a climbing wild rose vine, bluebells, and what I think are white scaevola flowers, which are also known as fairy fans. All three of these plants are known for attracting fairies, which is funny because Hoggle is spraying them. So why have plants there that will attract fairies if you don't want fairies around? Unless it's some sort of, I don't want to say punishment, because like those fairies probably don't deserve it, but it just seems to contradict itself. All right, so one thing that we kind of get is the idea of space outside of the labyrinth. Behind Sarah and Jareth are some small mountains and rolling hills. So this means that land exists beyond the labyrinth. It's not just floating out in space. Let's see here. Also, the outer wall of the labyrinth is ringed with obelisks. And obelisks also exist within part of the stone maze, as we can see when Sarah looks out at the labyrinth from the hill. So we'll go back to the photo that I initially showed you. All right, so we can gather that maybe there's possibly like a stone maze expansion that might go on that connects the obelisks or something. When we see Hoggle, he's seen ping into a gazing pond that's lined with stones. Um, it also looks like there are some random stones kind of scattered about. So I don't know if that means that the labyrinth is still expanding. Maybe it's being built in the direction that Sarah initially comes from. Um, I guess we'll never know. When Sarah asks Hoggle how to get into the labyrinth, Hoggle points behind her and two wooden doors open up. So let me cut to that real quick.
You get in there.
All right, so the doors are covered in rose vines, so maybe Sarah just missed it. Also, she was talking to about fairies with Hoggle at the time, and I don't know, perhaps she was just simply preoccupied and didn't uh, really take notice. So when Sarah passes through this first gate, we can briefly see that the doors are like fairly thick and they are constructed in a reinforced manner to prevent entry. Um, I don't know who they're keeping out. I don't know if it gets like super windy and it's just like a weather prevention. Uh, I mean, there's like a lot of tree debris that Sarah encounters in that first outer part. All right, so when Sarah gets to the guards for gate two, which is, hang on, go out. Okay, sorry, I'm right next to a dog door. When Sarah gets to the guards for the gate number two, uh, she meets Jim and Tim, Alf and Ralph. So Jim and Tim are on the bottom of the shields, and Alf and Ralph are at the top. Um, she's faced with a decision to make and a riddle of which door and how does she solve the riddle is also a kind of a question to ask. The riddle itself is a type of knights and knaves riddle where knights tell the truth and knaves always lie. It's what it comes down to is figuring out uh, who has the first true statement. So it's a lot easier to figure this out when it's written out. Um, but I will try to walk you through it.
We don't know.
But they do.
Oh, then I'll ask them.
No, you can't ask us. You can only ask one of us.
It's in the rules. And I should warn you that one of us always tells the truth and one of us always lies. That's a rule, too. He always lies.
I do not. I tell the truth.
Oh, what a lie!
All right, so when Sarah tries to figure this riddle out, her reasoning that she has is a bit off, which makes this part of the film a little more confusing. Ralph, who is in blue, tells Sarah that it's in the rules, one of them always tells the truth and one of them always lies. So if that statement is true, which Sarah believes it is, then Alf's statement of you can only ask one of us is false. Therefore, she could easily ask both of them if she so chose. Um, so let's see here. So if we look at this the other way around, if we look at Alf being true with you can only ask one of us, then Ralph's setup for the whole game becomes false. In this case, they're either uh, both of the ways are to the castle, or both ways are wrong and don't take you to the castle. Um, One could even say that when Alf asks Ralph, "Wait, is that right?" And Ralph replies, I don't know, I've never understood it. Ralph gives away that he was lying all along. Uh, this, of course, could be just purposeful banter designed to confuse Sarah. So um, that's how you figure out this particular gate is who has the first true statement that you believe. Um, and then you just kind of go from there. And if you believe she chose correctly or incorrectly, I'd like to hear your thoughts. So you can leave those in the either YouTube comments or you can go to dreampeaches.net and log into the forum and we can have further discussions on it there. I'd love to have that happen. Okay, let's go to gate number 3. All right, the third gate is guarded by the 2 knockers. One has its ring through its ears, the other through its mouth. While these don't really provide any particular insights, the knockers appear to have, they're kind of depicted to be depictions of fawns or satyrs by the look of the ears, horns, and the wild hair. That's kind of depicted in like a metallic sort of way. Um, they do appear right after Sarah helps Ludo. Um, so yeah, so let me go to the side here, and I will put a picture of the knockers here. All right. So Sarah passes through the door of the being that she was able to communicate with. Um, the only thing I can think of is that the satyrs are kind of found in forests, and that's where Sarah ends up. She ends up in the Forbidden Forest. Um, it was really hard for me to come up with a lot of insight on this particular gate because there was no riddle. There was nothing that she really had to resolve with this particular gate. All right. Gate number 4 is the Goblin City Gate. Um, I'm actually I'm going to show you the first image here, and then I'm going to show you the second image. Okay, so the Goblin City Gate has security measures, and it's actually 2 gates. We have an outer gate, which is guarded by a sleeping knight, and we have an inner gate. And when the inner gate is closed, it forms into a goblin robot called Humongous. When Sarah and her friends run into him, he asks, Who goes? But none of them answer. Instead, they kind of decide to just fight. I think that if Sarah was really a threat, the knight at the gate would not have been sleeping. Sir Didymus, hang on. Okay. Sir Didymus suggests that it's only a goblin city when Sarah urges him to be quiet. This means that the city is used to a lot of noise. And also, if it is a goblin city, then there must be other goblin cities. Otherwise, he would have stated that it's the goblin city, right? Okay. So once Sarah and her friends pass the outer city gate and it closes, the inner city gate, which is open, also closes. This traps them in what is called a barbican, though this one isn't like a roofed barbican. Um, and a barbican is a fortified gated entry. So we can see spikes come up and Humongous just kind of comes to life and starts defending the city and the castle that's beyond the walls, of course. Hoggle somehow manages to get up onto the outer wall, the top of the outer wall, and he like runs in and jumps down on top of Humongous, and then we can see that's actually piloted by a goblin. Um, so I think Hoggle knew about all of this kind of beforehand, and he kind of had an idea of what's up. So the stone maze itself is pretty interesting. Uh, it's pretty formidable in size and apparent thickness. It's home to eye lichen, worms, fairies, brick keeping goblins, vine plants, helping hands, and various other maze residents. Um, it's also home to wall openings that are hidden by optical illusion. There's a lot of statues. There's hidden underground structures, which includes stone heads, uh, the oubliettes, various passages, etc. Um, and when the hedge maze begins to creep in, there's like an increase of new creatures. So I want to start with the very first thing. We're going to go back to when Sarah first enters uh, the labyrinth here.
Very far.
Which way would you go?
Me? I wouldn't go either way.
If that's all the help you're gonna be, you can just leave.
You know your problem. You take too many things for granted.
Okay, so when Sarah asks Hoggle which way to go, and he responds he wouldn't go either way, um, I wonder if he is suggesting that there's a hidden entrance near them. Uh, when those hidden entrances that I was mentioning before, and that we see again when Sarah meets the worm. Uh, let's see here. So as we continue through the stone maze, Sarah passes some eye lichen. The eye lichen is a mossy lichen which grows along the stone walls. It's reactive to movement and can make like an eerie sound, almost a groan when it does move. Um, I've often wondered if the eye lichen helped Jareth see around the outer rim of the labyrinth. Also, I don't know why Sarah isn't more freaked out about a plant with eyeballs that kind of tracks her movement. Uh, it just seems like such a foreign idea of a plant moving to follow movement. Uh, I don't know. I think most people would kind of get weirded out with that. Um, so Sarah travels down this outer rim portion of the labyrinth, which is again set up in kind of an optical illusion sort of manner, so it looks straight, but we could tell from the outer perspective shots of the labyrinth that it was actually curving. So, um, and again, we see her like going over all this debris and stuff that's kind of strewn about. Um, so she encounters the worm. The worm says hello and invites Sarah inside, but she declines. And he's the first one to show her how deception can play a part in the labyrinth. And then, since she doesn't really bother asking, gives her directions to avoid the castle. Um, I think the overall lesson here is like be willing to ask questions for further understanding. Okay, so once that happens, it places her in kind of a new section of the stone maze. So before, the stones were pretty narrow. You could almost call them like Roman bricks or something, uh, but they're narrow and long. And the new section, they're more like brown and sand colored standard bricks. And uh, the obelisks, which were lining the top of the outer rim area, um, are a little more dispersed. They're more random and all that. And they really no longer are at the very top of of the stone walls. So one of these obelisks that she manages to run into uh, is just kind of in the middle of a section, and it has all these hands pointing. So let me find a picture of that, and I'll post it right here. Okay, so it's not really useful because there's no verbiage, there's no signs to share what the hands are pointing at or towards. Um, and also in this section, we start seeing round ball shapes randomly placed on top of the stone walls. Uh, and you might not have noticed that right away. It might take a couple watchings before you notice that. So could these represent the crystals that Jareth uses? Um, there also appears to be a lack of eye lichen in this particular area. Okay, so as Sarah goes along, she runs into the Brick Keepers, which I guess she doesn't really see them per se, but we see them as the audience. And according to the Bestiary, which is a book about creatures in the labyrinth, uh, the goblins that live under the stone maze are called Brick Keepers. Um, and they're not really happy when Sarah tries to leave a mark with her lipstick, which, let me show that real quick. Okay, so that lipstick to me looks like something called LA Colors, and I think you can still get LA Colors lipstick. Um, but when she whipped that out and to mark, I was just like, I've seen that before. It's been a long time, but I've seen that. LA Colors, you could pretty much pick it up at like, you could go into like a gas station or something, and if they had any lipstick at all, they'd probably have LA Colors. It was just really common and really cheap. And it was, if you were like a little kid or a young teenager or something, it was easily obtainable lipstick. Okay. So let's move along. She does encounter the helping hands. She kind of falls right into the hole. She doesn't pay attention, and she falls right into the hole after encountering Jim, Tim, Alf, and Ralph. Um, and the hole is filled with these blue-gray hands, which we learn are called the helping hands. And these creatures, they work together so they can form hand-shaped faces to talk to Sarah. They give her a choice of going up or down, and she decides that since she's going that way already, she'll go down, and that lands her in the oubliettes. So the oubliette is Sarah's first encounter with an underground layer to the labyrinth. And this is actually pretty far underground. It's kind of depicted as being one layer underground, but the tunnel of helping hands makes me think that maybe it's two layers. But we're not really sure. It's never really mentioned. So an oubliette is a hole in the ground. It has chains embedded in the stone, and it has like a single candle. And there's cobwebs everywhere and stuff. And Jareth has sent Hoggle there to meet up with Sarah, and Hoggle, of course, leads her out through a magical door. And he doesn't just lead her out; he leads her into the rest of this underground system that's under the stone maze. So when they get into that underground stone corridor, which appears to have various passageways, it also has these false alarms, which are also the big giant stone heads, and they relay cautions and warnings, whether they're true or not. Um, and it's established that they are just doing their job. So these big talking heads remind me of some sort of like a childlike perception of authoritative figures. where they're like, don't do this, don't do that. They might not provide a reason why. They just expect you to do as they say. So as they pass the false alarms, they enter a passageway which is made up of the darker brick, the darker, narrower brick, uh, which is the same as the stone in the outer rim portion of the stone maze. Uh, so it kind of appears that Hoggle really did like lead her back towards the beginning. And just inside this passageway, they run into Jareth, who is disguised as a goblin at first. Um, and after a little banter back and forth, he decides to conjure up the cleaners. Um, so the cleaners is a contraption that looks like it's designed to grind up any debris and clear out this particular passageway. Since it fits nicely in the passageway and it has a track on the floor that it follows. Um, I don't really know what the purpose is, um, unless it's some. I almost want to say like sewage or something, but that doesn't make sense because that's it's too big for a sewage line. But so I'm not really sure what the purpose is. Anyway, so Sarah and Hoggle avoid the cleaners, and there's a locked door area that they come across, so they have to go through this other door, which eventually opens up, and they kind of have a little bit of a shot of the cleaners going by, and the door that was locked, it was like it was locked with a chain and a lock on it. Uh, it's just like a pile of rubble after the cleaners goes through it. Uh, so anyway, so Sarah and Hoggle, they go up this ladder, and they're back in the brown and sand colored portion of the stone maze. Okay, so this section of the stone maze, we start to see that the hedge maze is encroaching. We could call this like a Stonehenge transition portion if we wanted to. Um, there's a lot of statues at this point. The statues are real modern and geometrical. So we can see soldiers with rifles, and they're they're dressed differently, but they're still soldiers. There's a woman with like a cylindrical item, and I don't know if it's supposed to be a modern representation of like a baby wrapped up or something, or if it's kind of looks like a helium tank or something. I don't know what it's supposed to be. Um, and in the background, we can kind of see go out all the way. Whatever. Um, we can kind of see a round clown figure. It's made up of like a series of balls and stuff, but it's a clown. So we have soldiers, a woman, and a clown. It's kind of an odd. It kind of reminds me of like statues that you would see like around Christmas or something. Kind of weird. There's a large sundial, and there's a large chair that's made up of stone carved books. And I don't know if they actually have anything written on the spine, so I don't know what books they're supposed to be. So Sarah and Hoggle, they kind of emerge and they start arguing a little bit. Um, this is when the wise man and his bird hat enter, and he actually moves a little faster than you'd think. Because I know he talks a little slow, but he's in there pretty fast, and he sits on the chair of books, and he has this talking bird acting as his hat. And he seems a little overexcited about a young girl.
Can you help me?
Oh, young girl.
Woo, woo, woo!
It's he doesn't seem to be very excited about meeting Hoggle, and it just maybe it's because I'm older at this point, but it just rubs me the wrong way the way he says all that. Um, he does end up giving Sarah two bits of information. The way forward is sometimes the way back, and also, quite often it seems we're not getting anywhere when in fact we are. So after this, we pretty much like go into the hedge maze, and that will be a whole other episode. Um, I'm not going to include Ludo in this because I include that into the hedge maze portion. Um, oh, I do want to give a quick shout out to the Bog of Eternal Stench stone wall. When Hoggle and Sarah are sent to the Bog of Eternal Stench, they end up cleaning two metal pieces to stop themselves from falling into the bog. And I'm sure I'll find a picture and put it right here. Okay, so it kind of looks like rebar. Um, and so I was thinking, like, does that indicate some construction methods for at least part of the labyrinth, or maybe just for like some main walls, because that seems to be a real thick wall. Um, I don't know. uh, that's okay. So I guess those are my thoughts on the Four Gates and the Stone Maze. The next episode is going to be on Jareth, and the episode after that is going to be on books for Labyrinth fans. Um, so I am interested in your thoughts. So you can email me audio, visual, or just written email submissions if you want. Go to dreampeaches.net and you will find all the information you need. You can also just go to the website and jump on the forum, and we can chit chat about everything and anything. And if you are interested in being part of one of these, uh, maybe we could double up, and you want to talk about the ballroom scene, or I don't know, just whatever, something, uh, technology of goblins, whatever comes to mind. Um, just let me know. I'm pretty open to stuff. Uh, Again, dreampeaches.net. The next episode is going to be about Jareth, so I'm sure people have opinions on that. Uh, yeah. I currently, let me bring it up here. Currently, I'm planning on discussing, like, thank you, kind of the origins of his character and some of his powers, and I don't know, just some other things that we can glean from his character from the movie, and also from like the novel and some of the other books that mention him and stuff. And we'll just kind of go from there. Uh, so yeah, again, dreampeaches.net. Uh, Join me in the forum. All you have to do is like, it's free to sign up, and it connects with like Google or Facebook or whatever. And so it's easy to log in and post away. It's I would love to have more discussions than just me chatting at myself. That's how it feels. Um, I am working on a really cool project that I'm posting in the forum. Uh, my I was I've been thinking about making some armor, so I'm putting together like what I imagine labyrinth inspired armor might look like. Uh, it's kind of slow going. I just kind of started, and I don't know, if you want to check it out, you can. Anyway, thank you for joining me this time. Next time, episode 10 will be about Jareth. Please send me your comments. Thanks.